This episode of Survey Program contains embarrassing poetry, bad creepypasta, and yes, I do say the F slur. Happy Halloween. Music's by Highwell. Fucking Halloween Discord noise was so stupid.
Oh, I always have Discord noises muted, so I have no idea what it was.
It's just like, it's like, boom, I don't know. It was like the regular Discord call noise, but it was spooky as fuck.
That's so annoying.
It was like it had a spooky filter. I don't know how to describe it. It had a spooky filter.
It had a spooky filter, all right.
You know, back when everybody used to get like spooky, scary skeletons, you know, in the golden age of Tumblr. It sounded like that, sort of.
Like, ooh. Nope, that's bad. That was nothing. That was terribly nothing.
That was the crooner cat girl going, ooh. It's Survey Program.
It's Survey Program.
It's Survey Program podcast. And it's not, listener beware, you're in for a scare. It's not just the Discord call sound that's spooky this week. It's the subject of the episode. But before we get into that, I have to do some cleanup. I have to do, because this is a serious journalistic endeavor. So I have to do some corrections. So I do want to note that in our last episode, either me or my guest Jackie said that Ralsei didn't prompt us to eavesdrop on the Noelle Susie scene in the dream bedroom in the weird route, but actually Ralsei does prompt us to, but Chris won't accept it no matter what the player doesn't get a choice. So that's a correction for you. That came straight from the bureau. Just as a note. All right, and so here's what we're actually talking about this week: the Seattle Mariners. No, we're not talking about the Mariners. They got eliminated since the last time I recorded, which tells you how far in advance the last episode was recorded. And now the World Series is happening, and dear listeners, you should know that I'm committed to this podcast because I'm only a little bit looking at the score of the World Series game that's going on while recording it, even though I'm a huge baseball fan. So How you been, Sophia?
I've been pretty good. Very busy. I've been sick, actually. I was sick for the last week, which made playing the Halloween hack a little bit of a pain because I didn't say what the episode was about. The episode is about the Halloween hack, the radiation Halloween hack from 2008. And I think you might have been getting close to the intended experience by playing it when you were sick, frankly. It might have been. I felt like I was dying, much like Varric is, I suppose.
Yeah. And so, I want to open this episode by noting the Toby tweet from a long time ago. Fan theories are fun, but I feel embarrassed whenever someone calls attention to something I did when I was 16. I guess I should just accept, quote, bad ROM hack with swears, unquote, as part of my eternal legacy. And so I guess I want to say, sorry, yeah, it is. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Juvenalia before we went into talking about the hack itself. Because I think people are often fascinated by what artists create when they're young, right? I mean, obviously Mozart has some very famous Juvenalia, but I think it's intriguing what people get up to before they're fully developed artists, and whether you like it or not, it can provide an insight into the things that they create later on. And so looking at Halloween hack made me think about my own Juvenalia, of which there is actually some extant on the internet. And for example, one of them is, the earliest contributions I have that are still extant on the internet are some photographs on Wikipedia pages, which I'll leave to the listener an exercise to try to discover those. But I was a fervent Wikipedia editor as a teen. If you look at Florida's state highway system, you'll find some of my contributions there. It's been horrific autism just for my whole life. The earliest thing that I think is still associated with me by name is SCP-072, which you might recognize as a very low number. But it was one of those first wave SCPs, and it's a scary bed that eats your toes while you're sleeping if you leave your toes exposed. And that, and back in the early days of the SCP Foundation nowadays is very high concept. There's all sorts of awesome metaphor, and like, it's such an awesome like creative writing exercise and shared universe. And I think my later work was much more reflective of that transitional period from being dumb creepypasta into this sort of shared world of, evocative experiences. But the early thing, it is a bed what eats your toes. And that was a fear, because that was a fear I used to have growing up. I would never sleep with my feet out of the sheet because I was afraid something was going to eat my toes. And that's how you know that I didn't grow up with a cat, because I feared that in the abstract. But as soon as I got Ezra 12 years ago, I started to sleep with my toes covered in the real, because the fucking cat will just attack my toes if I leave them exposed, even in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
And
Sawdust goes for faces more, but
that's unpleasant. Ezra luckily does not go for faces unless you've really pissed him off. No, Ezra, if you have your feet or the sort of legs out, he'll bite, even if it's the middle of the night. It's very unpleasant. I don't know why he does that. But that's the earliest thing out there. And I was wondering, what were you up to? What art were you making as a kid?
I was writing as a kid. As a little kid, I wrote fan fiction that I didn't even know the word fan fiction. But
oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that stuff that's not out there on the internet for me, for sure.
The first thing I was like posting on the internet was back on like Blogger, like I think even before Blogspot, it was Blogger, right?
Yes.
And I had a zombie serial that I called the Serial of the Dead that I posted like every week, and it was absolute garbage. And I tried to find it the other day when I first looked at these notes, and it's just gone. It's gone. If you search for Serial of the Dead, all you'll find is I forget what language it was.
That's a funny joke.
The other serial.
Yeah.
It's a good joke. It's a But I actually remembered while sitting here that I actually posted some poems I wrote in high school intentionally on the internet because a group I was hanging out with did an old shit poetry night. So there's some bad poetry from high school that I voluntarily posted in the last like 6 years.
Wow. That's incredible. I was doing back in the high school, I was doing a daily like newspaper style, like 3 or 4 panel comic about the like in our physics classroom there was like a pole, like a vertical beige pole that had like plugs in it, and I in pen I had put a little monocle and a suit and tie and a top hat on the pole. And so I created a comic about this pole who was a political organizer.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. And
was
so
he
I
a
was
pulling pole?
Yes, that was part of the joke. Yes. But I was passing that, I actually had some readers, there were folks who would sit down at my lunch table and were excited. I'd hand them the binder with today's poll in it. And they were excited to see where it was going. I mean, this was this was actually right around the time of Halloween Hack, because I remember it was a little bit before, because this was sort of in the lead up to the 2008 presidential election. And so everybody was very excited during that time. And Zoomers, if you don't understand the concept of somebody being excited about a presidential election, ask somebody older and they'll be able to explain it to you, because it actually used to happen. And so, I'm thinking about that environment because Toby is the same age as I am. And so, we were in very similar stages of artistic development at the same time. And so this came out, and this is an incredible labor. So the Halloween Hack is a mod basically a ROM hack, an edit of the game Earthbound. If you don't know what Earthbound is, what are you listening to this podcast for? That's very confusing. But but I was impressed by, as I was reading the making of document that's included with it, how fucking hard it was to make this. There's a big ROM hack scene on the Starman forums and other community sites surrounding Earthbound at the time of this release. And so there were some mod tools, right? But compared even to modern day modding, which is no easy feat, you're like hand editing basically everything to make this happen. And when people complain about that, when people say, "Oh, Undertale's such jank," it's like that's a walk in the park compared to making this game. This was really like with the making a game with the training weights on. And if you could pull this off, you could pull anything off.
Yeah, and he made the music with the training weights on, with this manual display that he shows in the making of document that just boggles the mind. I'm not musically inclined, but this is beyond incomprehensible to me.
Yeah, the Earthbound music editor Windows app is just like, you're basically hand coding the music, and it reminded me of like if you've ever seen a player piano or a carousel organ, the music for that is like punched in on little punch cards, and this is basically the equivalent of doing that. And I mean, it's crazy that Megalovania came from this, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, he says in the making of document that Megalovania, he wanted to put Megalomania from Live Alive in there, but he couldn't. He doesn't say why he couldn't, presumably because this interface is impossible.
Yeah.
But so he composed Megalovania instead. And he says, "I pretty much just yelled whatever I felt like into a mic and copied it down, and then put it into this player piano digital creature. And that gave us one of the most iconic sounds of the internet."
Yeah. I think about that and the fact that Toby speaks about this game with a little bit of embarrassment, which actually, spoiler alert for I think what we're going to be talking about here, it's not actually that embarrassing. Like, it's actually really impressive for a 16-year-old to have made this, and I don't think it's super embarrassing. But it's funny to to think that I guess that when you try to play Megalovania on the piano in Chapter 4, right, the annoying dog will come and run you over in a car, which is also how it feels to have that is how it feels to have people bring up your old work sometimes. But I'm impressed by that too, because Megalovania is sticking really close to a minor blues scale for most of the track, and so I don't know. I don't think he had some music schooling, right? But just to know it was like that level of improvised is kind of impressive. It's great. But you get into this game and you get into Tucson, the city, and it's set after the events of Earthbound. And so the heroes, but it's like an alternate timeline basically, where instead of Prayer working to defeat Gygas or Gygas, I've never said this out loud. Shit, I'm a sued. Gygas.
I know probably less than you do, and I always say Gygas.
Gygas. Let's go with Gygas. But instead of the Prayer working, the heroes don't come back. So they saved the world, but the heroes that from Earthbound are dead and gone. And so there's a sort of a gulf in this community where they should be. But the world is functioning pretty well overall, right? It's a nice town. If you try to go back to Onett, there's crazy monsters. They've been stirred up by something, so it's temporarily difficult to access. But it's it's a very claustrophobic feeling. It's like you're stuck in one NPC town, and you're not playing as Ness. Ness is gone. You're playing as Varric from the game Brandish.
Sure.
And I haven't played the game Brandish. Like many 90s RPGs that aren't Earthbound, I haven't touched it. So maybe I'm sure at some point in the future I will have to play Brandish for an episode of the show, especially since it came up a lot during the 10th anniversary stream too. Um, but that's one of the things for Brandish. In addition to bringing the main character in, it also provided this really descriptive, sort of evocative narration style.
Yeah.
It's very it's very striking how florid the narration is, at times a little
Yeah.
purple even.
Yeah, every time you go from one zone to another, the narration goes into this little burst of you feel the world around you changing and you feel evil ahead of you, but you keep going and you don't know why. And it's very consistent with this you don't know what is driving you forward element too. But it's so descriptive and so absolutely very purple. Lots of insistence on the rot and cold in your soul and stuff.
Yes. um that's a contrast, I think, with the dialogue, especially early on, because the NPC, the town people's dialogue, is very light. It's very funny. It is weird to play a game. It came with Toby's sort of NPC writing style, an early version of the NPC writing style where characters are swearing, like,
Yep.
where characters are saying fuck.
Yep.
But I think it's
Quite
really
a
interesting.
few fucking dams.
Yes, yeah, quite a few fucks. There's some dams and asses in Deltarune, but
That's true. That's true.
It's much more. It's we're going all. There's we're not putting an age rating on the Halloween hack, so it's a little more. And obviously, look, the big one comes at the very end. All right, the big one. I know that's what most everybody. If you haven't played this game, that's what you know about it. They say faggot at the end. It's true.
It's the least interesting part of the hack is just the fact of the word faggot.
Yes,
There's so much else going on.
Yes, it's true. But I think one of my main takeaways from playing it and experiencing the dialogue of it is like the I think a lot of people maybe lazily encountered Toby's work after reading a certain webcomic that Toby was a contributor to, that I did some podcast episodes about, and sort of assumed that one, among other things, that sort of his style descended from it, right? That that it was the core influence behind the sort of flippant dialogue style that he employs. And we actually have a little bit of surviving juvenilia that proves that's not the case, right? That that there was an extant style here that happened to mesh well with that webcomics dialogue, but that didn't come whole cloth from it. And I think that challenges some lazy assumptions about sort of where the writing style comes from.
Yeah, he definitely already had that. It's like maybe there's some element where that was just sort of ambiently how people were talking online and stuff. I think that might be kind of true.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a creature of
fuzzy memories.
Yeah, like people on forums were so weird. And people used to spend a lot more time on forums, and people were really encouraged to cultivate this sort of bantery, in character personality on 2000s forums that I think really honed that ability to like do that irreverent style of talking. And you think about it, one of the things I reviewed to make sure I didn't miss stuff, one of the things I reviewed was an old like something awful let's play of the game, where you've got people talking like basically in character and narrating the story alongside it, as the in the way that the original let's play was not a video, it was a series of screenshots in forum posts, with writing alongside.
I miss those days.
I know, right? Weren't those fun? And I don't know. It's such a perfect time. It really did sort of transport me back to that world. It's such a great time capsule of that like time. And I think it's really interesting too, that it's good. The writing is
It's
good.
good.
Yeah.
It's
Like,
pretty good. It's definitely not like a fully matured piece, but it is fundamentally a well-told story.
yeah, I laughed a bunch. Like it's got really intriguing
That
psychological horror. Um
Yeah, the whole journey into Dr. Andonut's mind is just like the first chunk of the game is just like, oh, this is Earthbound, but there are scary monsters and it's dark and grim, and it's like, whatever, this is fine, the writing's okay.
there's
And then you get to
blood.
the like, there's blood, and then you get to the meat of the game, which is the journey into Dr. Andonut's mind in this artificial magicant or whatever. And the writing just starts kind of popping off. It starts being like, there are these themes that we are driving home. There is a plot happening here that is not just kill the monster. There is this delve into this old man's deteriorating mind, all his guilt and shame, and it's really compelling. And
Yeah.
yeah, I really liked it
Yeah, yeah,
actually.
it's fun. This is another classic example of, cuz like we have a bunch to talk about here in terms of parallels where I kind of pitched an episode as a joke. I was like, "Oh, we're just going to do a Halloween episode that's a joke and we're going to play the bad ROM hack and make be silly about it." And just like the rules episode, there's nothing's a joke in Deltarune world. Everything is fucking serious as hell. And
Yeah.
obviously you're playing it now, and I think most people who play it now are not playing it as an independent artifact, right? And so I do want to give some concessions to not mentioning the parallels until now, and not mentioning the way that elements of this work were echoed until now. I do want to give some space to understand that this was a period, this was a product of a specific forum culture and a specific mod culture that's in conversation with that in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And it was pretty well received among that community, right? This was Toby's second Earthbound ROM hack, and the much more complex one. Even without its context as like a precursor of Undertale and Deltarune thematically in a lot of ways, like it is a work that does stand on its own, not to the same degree as Toby's other works, but like, it was a success in its community at the time. And I think
Yeah.
I do want to recognize that rather than just saying, okay, I played it, now let's talk about Deltarune and Undertale, and let's be like, ooh, this is just like this X is just like Y.
Uh, I will say it is really, really hard.
Yeah, it's a crazy grind, and I did
Like,
not beat it myself. I did end up
yeah,
watching and reading Let's Plays of it over the course of the last week, because I'm like,
yeah.
so a thing about me, I hate grinding in RPGs, so I did Steel Valor, I did watch and read it. You beat it though, right?
Sort of. I did beat it, but only after using Game Genie codes to give myself infinite money and all the characters 999 HP
That's all
because I
right.
was
That's
so
how I
tired
beat
of
Jebel.
dying. Fair enough.
That's how I beat Jebel.
But yeah, I did firsthand experience the story just without the grinding.
Yeah. And so now that that's out of the way, now that we've acknowledged that it was a work that was in its own context, we can acknowledge, man, there's a lot in here that you can read into from a Undertale and Deltarune lens, right?
There's so much. Like with the first half, I was just like, yeah, there's this thing where the hero is always compelled forward. You are always compelled forward by a drive you don't understand, and that's Deltarune parallels.
And
But
Undertale's No
once you,
Mercy route as well,
yes,
and I want to put a pin in that to talk about it later, because I think that's kind of going to be the last thing I want to say, and so definitely put a pin in
yeah,
that. And in
yeah, but like after that, it just really ramps up. It gets so strong. Like the first time, like you talk to Dr. Andonuts, he starts saying that, "What's that in your eyes?" And it's like, interesting. The silent protagonist has this eye thing,
yes,
and in the making of Doc, Toby says Varric's eyes are the scariest thing in the world, and you're gonna kill this old man. What
yes,
do Varric's eyes look like anyway? Which is one of the little things that has built up over and over again with Chris. And
absolutely. And I mean, Varric is looks so much like Chris's Dark World form,
yes,
right? Where, with the plate armor, the shadowed eyes, like, Chris clearly draws inspirations from Varric's appearance. Um,
yeah,
it's so close.
yeah.
And I think it's very interesting to to have this character that's sort of the puppet on the string in this narrative that then is Chris becomes sort of an echo of.
Yeah.
Another note, so just some things that we both noted as we were playing along that were very like things that we noticed before we get back to that was originally the idea was that you were going to use the souls, use the lost souls to defeat to revive Jeff and defeat defeat the final boss. Was a quote interesting, but I thought it was way too cheesy and didn't really make any sense, so I didn't put it in. And obviously, Toby got over the idea that was a cheesy idea at some point in the next 10 years after that.
Or found a way to make it not cheesy, because I think it would have been cheesy here, but he executes it well in Undertale.
Exactly. But the one of the biggest things that really got me was just in terms of Undertale's relationship to science and mad scientists, and
Yes.
the especially scientists that are hiding a sort of a trauma around losing people. Obviously, you have to talk about Alphys and Gaster in this context, right? Where Andonuts is a precursor to those characters, where there's a like Alphys, Andonuts is hiding these secret traumas and these secret horrors from the community. Obviously, Alphys has not gone mad with that revelation, but it's sort of split into two characters, right? Where then Gaster is this character who is lost, who has disappeared into his own creation, a thing that happens at the end to Andonuts here, and has these themes of being associated with these strange psychological echoes, and it makes me very interested in where everything with Gaster is going is one of the biggest overarching mysteries. We've talked about it at a number of episodes on this show, especially episode 2. But playing this just made me think more and more that like the idea that whatever is eventually revealed about Gaster will come in the form of like a full psychological, almost Yumi Nikki-esque, like immersive experience like this game ends up descending into feels more and more likely to me.
Oh, that would be crazy. Journey into Gaster's mind?
What if we're already in it?
What if we're already in it?
I'd take a big puff of the joint. What if we're already in Gaster's mind, man?
Oh, what if it's all just Wingding's dream?
Yeah, well, an attempt to change the story, to reverse, these themes of trying to change fate and change the narrative, and the power of the player's will to do that. And in addition to those scientist parallels, there's also a lot going on here that mirrors the creatures in the True Lab, right?
Yes. Yeah, every third enemy that Toby redesigned is just like a proto-amalgamate. Like, it's one or multiple sprites that is all melty and smashed together, and clearly not how it's supposed to be, but somehow animated despite being a melty echo of itself. And then there's the enemy called Amalgamate,
Yeah.
which is also the same way.
Yeah. Like there's
And says,
the True Lab is the part of Undertale that Toby did most himself. That had the fewest contributions from other contributors, and so it's also the part that mirrors the descent into the ending of this hack the most. And so these are clearly themes that have been sort of ruminated on as this horror element in Undertale that thus far hasn't been explored in Deltarune as much, right? it still seems inevitable that we are in for some true horror in Deltarune in the future. And obviously the weird route exists, but I'm talking even on the main route, even to get the nicest ending in the game in Undertale, you have to play through the True Lab, right? You have to be exposed to these classic horror game elements that sort of felt presaged by this. And then in addition, this you brought up that there was some parallels with the psychological element, right?
Yeah. In the journey through Dr. Andinut's mind, you go into these three like sets of memories and self-reflections, and there is this resemblance in this sequence to I don't know if it's spurious if I'm just imagining it, but there is one specific room in the second section that looks so much like the room that you get the trip ticket in the route to Man Country. And there's not that much content there other than you are witnessing the thoughts of a doddering old man as he reflects on his life. But there's also throughout the first and second sections of that dive into Dr. Andinut's mind, there's this recurring theme of his latent homosexuality that it's kind of played for a joke in the first boss, but it's also like being treated with some seriousness. And I can't tell if I'm just making shit up when I say that there is a resemblance between Dr. Andinut's sexuality and Chris's gender. But I feel like there is. I feel like the way it's presented has this thin but definite parallel.
Well, there's that. That's the thing is it feels like this is now becoming part of a comprehensive argument for like a unified metaphorical approach to understanding repression of identity in characters,
Yes.
right? And so, you know, ahead of your final confrontation with Andonuts, you turn into 8-bit sprites, right? You sort of, you know, you like move back a generation visually for your party as you walk up to the last boss. And the quote from the making of document is, quote, "The regression of gaming system denotes a huge loss of power and speed. It shows that you're totally and utterly powerless. It also makes my heart hurt for a reason I don't understand." And that regression into a different game system, into an earlier game environment, representing an earlier self, right? A hidden self, is also true in Man Country and throughout the boards in Chapter 3, right? You know, they represent this lost childhood for Chris in this really evocative way. So I think this is far from a spurious connection. I think it's a very clear way to, you know, much as an inset in a film, right, can use a different film style to represent an older time period, like you saw in the most recent season of Severance, using 35 millimeter for old, you know, for old memories, or the insets in the Grand Budapest Hotel being, you know, period appropriate film stock styles, right? To represent different time periods of the characters' lives and the hotel's life. It's like, this is actually how you could stylistically represent this within a game, right? You can represent this repression and these past memories within a game. And I do want to say, before anybody says it in the comments on YouTube or in the Discord, yes, I know Metal Gear did that. Yes, I know that Metal Gear used the prior generation graphics for a flashback portion once. I think that's awesome. And if somebody is a real sicko and they want to tell me, oh, and also Yakuza does that sometimes for flashbacks, they're visibly in the old engine. That's true as well. You got me. You told me. But before we get back to the but yeah, I do think, and I think I'm just going to proceed with this. I do think genuinely that this kind of like metaphorical approach to queerness, to concealed queerness, is like the way that it's done across all of these games that you know, across all the ludography of Toby Fox, right? And It's like I'm so sorry to be quoting something somebody wrote when they're 16, but also it's a surprisingly cogent bit of writing on understanding how representation works in Undertale and seems to be working in Deltarune. And it's quote it's here's a quote from the making of document. I'm just going to come out, no pun intended, and say that in this game's canon, Dr. Andernuts is probably gay. Not trying to pull a J.K. Rowling Dumbledore, because my reasoning actually makes sense and is alluded to in the game, and that it's one of those things that you cannot notice or ignore easily, and it doesn't matter, and it's not necessarily true anyway. But still, it's kind of cool. You may be wondering, okay, what the fuck? How the hell were we supposed to know he was gay? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man, if I made him come right out, it would have been pretty lame. It's more of a subtle thing. So how could you know? And then there's some examples in this document of all the reasons why you should be able to tell that he's gay. His wife is afraid of, his wife is revealing that she thinks he's not affectionate with her. There's the literal representation of homosexual thoughts that you fight as a boss. There's all these allusions throughout. And there's
that boss is named No.
The boss is named No, and you can run from it. And so that's like three like sexy images of male men's body parts. And the quote from that is, now I really, really, really wanted to make that last one a girl and add some hot chicks all around his magic camp, because hot chicks are awesome and I totally have dreams about them a lot, if you know what I mean. But I didn't get to, and I stopped myself because I wanted someone to go, hey, wait a second, where are all the chicks? Oh, well, I guess this guy is gay. Really now, I just think it's a hell of a lot more interesting if, in addition to all his other things, the reason you're fighting the antagonist is because of an inferiority complex he developed due to his own repressed sexuality interfering with his relationship. Plus, angry gay guys using super psychic attacks is cool to think about. I mean, it really makes absolutely no difference, but I still think it's cool. End quote. And I just...
There's so much. There's so much in that.
Angry gay guys using super psychic attacks is cool to think about. Like, you're right. You nailed it right away. You figured out what makes a good video game. Absolutely. That's also something that is in Metal Gear. But genuinely, like this approach to if I just come out and say it, it's clumsy, it feels inauthentic, it feels like I'm J.K. Rowling. It's such a great document to be able to refer to, even if it's very old, very outdated, obviously quite immature. It's still like, it's actually still a shockingly mature perspective on queer representation, right? It's yes. I think it's very impressive for a teenager to have. But, this idea that if you communicate a character's queerness, if you communicate a character's repression through ways that the audience deduces and through, ways that the audience can understand, if you can convey this to them, it's more powerful than telling them directly. And I know people sometimes get frustrated with, despite the abundance of implicit queer representation in Undertale and Deltarune, that there's a lack of explicit labeling of those characters' identities and relationships, right? No character in Undertale turns to the screen and says, I'm a lesbian. Like, Napstablook doesn't turn to the screen and say, I'm non-binary, I'm non-boonary, because I'm a ghost. The lion that you see, embracing that Metaton's example to transition doesn't say, and that's because I'm transgender and I'm taking feminizing hormones now. And look, I'm someone who in the past has included some explicit representation in my work, but I've also tried to lean more towards people understanding what a character is and maybe commenting on it outside of the work, which Toby never does. But genuinely, I do think that this is an approach that I think has a lot of respect. And I was thinking about it a lot, too, because, you watch the Undertale 10th anniversary stream, and there's a lot of people who sort of were like, this was my first exposure to this kind of, to being queer. And I think by being implicit instead of explicit, you kind of smuggle it into people, right?
Yes, absolutely. There are so many people who I know who realized that girls could like girls because of Undyne and Alphys. And if either of them had like said, because I'm a lesbian or anything like that, it would have been different. It wouldn't have communicated the same way. It would have stated, I know show don't tell is bullshit, but it is in a vacuum somewhat valuable to demonstrate something rather than state it.
Well, and you get past people's either soft bigotry or also as well, I do think you get past this even in a positive context. Some people are they want everything to be filed away into clean categories of identity,
Yes.
and that's just not how people work in real life. And so having some stuff where things aren't quite so explicit and it's quite so defined and put into boxes is great. And so I just think this is a great first example of an approach that would later be used in a way that I think everyone sort of implicitly understands the queerness of Undertale, right? Even though it's not spelled out, right? People understand that Mad Mew Mew is a representation of a trans woman, and Metaton is a representation of a trans man, and Undertale and Alphys are dating, and I think Alphys is bi probably, but again, who cares? Like the game doesn't bother to like have a character turn to the camera and be like, here's all my identity categories, right? Like you just figure it out. You just experience it over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, I'm old. Speaking of parallels,
I'm old. Yes, I'm old.
Yes, one of the characters in Arn's Winter Quest has a text bubble that says "I'm old." Making it one of the oldest running jokes in Toby's ludography, and that is referenced in one of the amalgamations later on in the Halloween hack.
I believe in the enemy called Amalgamate in this one is where "I'm old" appears.
And so I thought that was just such a funny thing to know that I'm old has been kicking around for that long before appearing in Deltarune Chapter 4.
And the final punchline also has a random ghost fart on you, and you scream with Friat, Friaght.
Just
so
like Jack
he's been doing this. Yeah, he's been doing the scary thing for years.
Yeah. And so there's as you're playing it, you really do feel that it's suffused with a sense of this is a thing that was made by somebody who would later go on to make Undertale and Deltarune. And so with the queer rep and the jokes and the way that the game is sort of pulling you forward, it feels very, very similar. But then what this really shone a light on for me is, more than anything, we've talked at a number of times over the course of this show about like capital G gaming and like gamers and like what playing a game actually means and like what the impulses you get when you're playing an RPG actually mean, right? That the No Mercy route is sort of gamification taken to an extreme, right? And Kara's passion is for increasing the numbers of everything and optimizing everything and filling up the glass all the way. And No Mercy is what happens when you play with that natural gamer compulsion to defeat everything, to get stronger, to explore everything, to push the game and break it to its limits. And as we talked about in the last episode, the weird route is sort of a parallel to that, where it's less about taking the natural conclusion of the gamer ideology and sort of more the way that people can break games at the margins as a way of exerting their control over them. And in that way, reshaping Deltarune's queerer narrative into something more like frighteningly heteronormative, and also something that, it has that more traditional video gamey relationship to violence, and, using violence to become stronger. And at the heart of it, really, throughout all of this, and then going back here to the Halloween hack, is a question of agency. It's a question of, the force that is driving these characters forward to do these terrible things is you, listener. It's you. It's you and me and Sophia and all of the people playing these games, right? The forbidden force that drives your legs yet forward, quote from the game's narration, is you. It's the player. It's that desire to keep playing the game. And I'm starting to get close to a grand unified theory of like gaming being bad.
Yeah, that there is this frequent thing that crops up in Toby's works about going forward with the game, proceeding, doing things the gaming way is hurting things. It's hurting the fictional characters in the story. It's forcing the character to do harm, to kill an old man or put on a ring. And
Or kill the stragglers in the wasteland, or kill the innocent monsters in the underground, right? And it's not to say that this isn't some cheap trick like a sort of a 2010s narrative RPG where it's like, do you choose the good option or the bad option? No, it's there's not really a choice, right? This is a game where a sword is put in your hand, and so by choosing to play it and proceed with it, you are engaging in violence, right? You are like by choosing to play, you are complicit, and the game is all like, it's not like the game is an innocent and you're imposing your evil will upon the game, right? This is a game about you're handed a sword and you're asked to proceed, and the only thing that you can do is quit. You can close the game, and that's the only way to avoid the violence that will come.
it's just like Susie says. If you're not having fun, then don't play it.
That's right, exactly. And like it's so notable that's a perspective, held by Susie, the White Pin of Hope, and also somebody who makes a direct reference to Halloween Hack in one of her lines in chapter 4, right? So at the right before you go to fight the very, very final boss, the final manifestation of Dr. Endonuts, he tells you to eat shit, faggots. And Susie says, when you equip a Halloween pencil, eat dirt, losers.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
And so yeah, and so there's a it's exciting. It's such a funny little reference. But yeah, Susie gets a reference to the Halloween Hack in Deltarune chapter 4, which I just think is awesome.
That rules.
And Susie does represent sort of breaking that chain, right? Breaking that imposition of choice, right? She represents the positive side of freedom in, putting down the sword and breaking out of your imposed role. And I do want to quote another part of the making of document here, which I think is really illustrative of some of the later things that we've been talking about, which is, quote, the main theme of this game is the lack of choice. There is really no choice in this game. From the moment you start to the moment you finish, you're destined to kill Dr. Endonuts. There are 2 endings, but they both eventually end up the same way. It's all a big joke on the player. Put a pin in this. Deltarune has 1 ending. We have been told since the very beginning that Deltarune has 1 ending. Despite the fact that the things that we are doing very clearly impact the game world in different ways, Deltarune has 1 ending. Isn't that interesting, Sophia?
It's so interesting.
And then back to it. That's why Tucson is a little claustrophobic, because no matter what you can do, no matter who you talk to, you can only delay the inevitable. Once you get to the end of the sewers, you can't go back. You can only go forward. No choice. Once you get to the end of winters, you can't go back. You can only go forward. No choice. You know why there isn't a choice there? Because you already chose to make Varric go into the door. You already chose to go forward. The only real choice, as Varric realizes at the end of the game, is to stop or keep going. By stop, he means turn off the game, and that's all you can do. Anything you play is your own fault for playing, and that's the only real choice you can make. You might feel like the game's linear or claustrophobic up until Dr. Endonuts, but that's really where the point is driven home. The game tells you you have a choice, that you always have a choice. Then all you can do is kill him. That's your choice. Are you going to make it? Yeah, you are. People were kind of wondering why they did that. It's because games nowadays always make you feel so empowered when you're really not choosing anything. My game makes it very clear that you are empowered when you aren't choosing anything, really, and it feels awful. It makes you feel cheated, and I think that's pretty good because that's exactly what I set out to do.
It's such a fascinating ethos that does feel like he's carried that through all this time. Is there there is when you are playing a game, there is a path that you follow, and your choices during that path don't they aren't actually choices. They are what is set in front of you by the game.
And there's
They are
something
lies.
deeply there's something deeply evil and deceiving about the AAA open world Assassin's Creed game that takes 200 hours and just sucks up all your time where you're making meaningless decisions the entire way through. And there's just something so gross and cynical about those games, and so I do sort of appreciate from a negative perspective seeing that get skewered, seeing that get poked at a little bit by saying this player empowerment bullshit is all a lie.
Yeah.
Not that I haven't wasted a bunch
yeah.
of my life on Assassin's Creed games as well, at various points throughout the years.
Oh, yeah, I have like 120 hours in Dragon Age Inquisition.
Yeah. And that's a game all about choices, right? You literally get to sit on the throne and make choices between various factions, and and that the fact of the matter is, and this isn't done out of a desire to tear down the RPG, right? It's not Toby Fox is not bombarding the headquarters here. Like that, it's out of playing a bunch of RPGs and identifying this through line of like, here's a real critique. You can make a great RPG by steel manning the critiques against RPGs and saying, here's the problem with the genre is that it all feels empty in the end because there's no such thing as a real choice. And it's such a push right at the fundamental limitations of the medium. It's so fascinating to me. It's almost like it's like video game anti-cinema, like where you see the sort of viewer hostility of a French avant-garde movie, or even something like Jonathan Glazer's Zone of Interest that uses the the methods of cinema to argue against cinema as an art form. And that's I think it's a surprisingly avant-garde thing to be doing with your video game career.
But he seems to be committed to it from the very beginning, and committed to still telling a good story while he does that.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not using this to argue that, and Deltarune's going to end with a bad ending, with one bad ending, and everything's going to suck, and it's not going to be wholesome. Like, it's Undertale is like a struggle against the limitations of the medium. It's saying, we understand how this medium is limited, and if we accept those limitations and try to push them to their absolute limit narratively, then something transformative can happen, right? And so I'm not saying, Deltarune's going to end in an edgelord explosion, and it's going to be just like Halloween Hack, but I am saying that these are games that are very aware of the limitations of choice in games, and as we're thinking about and looking forward to Deltarune, we should keep in mind that this is a card in the deck that can be played. Like, this level of cynicism does absolutely exist in the ludography.
Yeah, there is so much hope in Deltarune that I don't think there's any chance that it ends in a edgy, dark ending.
No,
but I do believe that especially after playing Halloween Hack, after reading this document, I sincerely believe that in a very real sense, there will be only one ending, in a meaningful sense. And I'm more excited than ever to see what that is.
Yeah. And I think, we're all, whatever way we get to that ending, it's going to grapple with these questions of agency and choice and narrative reality versus player reality, and we're already seeing those fissures start to show and that narrative start to develop. And so really, I was expecting it to go back play this game and be like, haha, funny slurs. It's so stupid and dumb. No, I actually, it kind of provided this great relief for the other two, for the two actual games that Toby's made, and really made me excited to think about what could happen next. And so it was,
Yeah.
do I recommend you play it? I don't know, maybe.
At least read the making of document if you're not gonna watch it or play it or watch someone play it.
And before I dove in, I can also recommend Miakon's. I did a quick introduction to the hack, like a 15-minute video essay. And if you wanna to get a quick summary of why this thing is important and what it means, I'll put the link to that in the description because I thought that was a great video. That's I think that's it. And so I wanted to circle back to the start because we were talking about Juvenalia, and Sophia, you put in the outline that you had one of your high school poems, right? And you had a line from one of those high school poems that was a really awful line that haunts me to this day. And so I have to hear it, and I have to end this episode with that line.
So, it was a love poem, and I was a shitty, stupid 15-year-old or whatever, so I didn't even know what love was. And to fit a rhyme scheme and a rhythm scheme, I wrote the line, "The children we will conceive."
Oh, wow. And Palmer Luckey immediately awarded you a grant.
Oh, God. Everyone's gonna hear it.
All right, well, that's Survey Program, everybody. Happy Halloween. I hope you have fun this weekend. I hope you enjoy your Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. And may you and all the children you conceive have a wonderful future ahead of you. Sophia, do you have anything you want to plug before? Sophia is dead on the ground, unfortunately. So you have a podcast. You have a podcast called we need to talk about. We have to talk about Dash Rendar.
Yeah, I do have a podcast. We have to talk about Dash Rendar. I never talk about conceiving children on it. So we haven't gotten to the part where Han Solo and Leia get married, so...
Yeah, so you're gonna have to get there eventually. All right, well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you coming and doing all this homework on short notice for this episode. You really come in clutch. You can also check in the description. You can listen to me and Sophia's last episode about Carol and Toriel. And you can check out We Have to Talk About Dash Rendar in the chat. And thanks for coming on. Have a good evening.
Bye.
All right, that's Survey Program. Thanks to those who are already supporting the show by joining the Green Room at groupofshrike.net or the link in the description. That's $5 a month to help support the cost of hosting, and you get a bonus episode every month and access to an exclusive channel on the Discord. The rest of the Discord, though, it's open to everybody. You can join at the link in the description, and I'm really excited to talk in there, especially as more news about Chapter 5 is sure to come out soon. Deltarune news this week, that game's in an early playable state, so we're looking forward to that. You can follow the show on Blue Sky. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, in your own podcast app. You can review it there or leave comments on YouTube. And thanks to Highwell, as always, for this excellent Megalovania remix. You can find the Bandcamp link in the description. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. See you next week.
Pushright Amalgamated General Productions GmbH.